Well, welcome everybody to this week's edition of our Sales Club, sponsored by 3D Training and the American Club Association. So this week is on some of the different gambits that buyers use to salespeople, and we'll get into several of them real quick. But let me explain to you how we do the timing. I don't know if you've ever heard what's called the Pomodoro effect, and the Pomodoro effect basically says that our mind can only handle about 50 minutes at a time, and even shorter is even better. The Pomodoro effect says basically if you're working on a task or you're doing something, that you should do about 50 minutes, take a break, and then take a 10-minute break, and then extend the breaks longer and longer each time you do that. So that if you're spending about 8 hours working on a project or a task, you should have already had about 6 to 8 breaks of length from 10 to 15 to 20 minutes of staying on. And if you think about it, if anybody remembers in class, most schools, your classroom periods are about 50 minutes because it first took about 10 minutes once class started for the teacher to take enrollment and get everybody settled down. And then there's about 30 to 40 minutes of time that the students could comprehend and grasp the information before they start losing it. So I try and make these sessions at least a half hour, but not any more than 50 minutes, but this session will probably go pretty quick. So this is about the gambits that prospects do to all of us salespeople and how to react to it. Number one, we call it the flinch. And the flinch is when the prospect physically reacts to your price. It's like, oh my God, it's that much. Oh, that's way too high. And quite frankly, I did this as a prospect to a gentleman this morning who is trying to sell me room dividers, partitions. And originally he said, oh, they've got 750 for these used partitions. And then when we came in and he measured my room, he came back and he said, well, all right, that's going to be $2,100. And what? You said it'd be 750. Well, that was per, cubicle. And you're talking about three here. So 3 times 750. So I actually did this to him. When people do this to you and they go, oh my God, it's that much. What they're trying to do is they're trying to put you off on your heels. They're trying to get you in a defensive mode. They feel that when we talk about negotiating is about sources of leverage. And they're thinking that they can create more leverage by flinching and actually physically reacting to what you price that a product or service to be. So what you have to do when a client does that is just stay neutral. Oh my God, it's that much. Yeah, it is that much. Hey, remember you said this was the problem, this was the problem, and you said this is how this problem was impacting you personally. You don't want to jump into immediately discounting, thinking that that's what happens. Oh my God, they're never going to buy that much. It is a gambit. It is the flinch to try and get you as a salesperson to modify your terms. And if you start thinking about sales, actual sales is getting your price for your product or service. Negotiating is modifying price or your service to get the deal. And often salespeople aren't really selling, they're negotiating and working at getting a lower price for the client. So think about what you can do to really go back to the pain. No pain, no sale. Quantify the cost of that pain and even calculate the cost of delaying. If somebody does, oh my God, it's that much, I've got to shop. I can appreciate that. Hey, let's pretend you don't get this fixed. You continue to shop for 2 or 3 more weeks. What's some of the impact that has on you by not taking care of this? And the last point of this one is don't drip like a wet rag every time he or she tries to touch you, because as long as they'll get water out of the rag, they'll keep asking for concessions and demands. So don't give into that flinch the first time right away. Just do a solid pain step. And the most important thing on this page is how is that pain impacting them personally? Remember, there's a couple different levels of pain, but the first pain is usually business pain. And if you can get to the personal pain as to how this problem is affecting them, people are going to be more willing to just adjust their mindset and go with the price. So that's number one, is the flinch. Second thing they do is, again, part of the flinch is, boy, we can get it cheaper. Well, if that's the case, people don't buy on price. people buy on value. And what I mean by that is I'll do some of my trainings. When somebody says, "Oh, my people all buy, price, price, price," unless I'm the lowest price, I can't get the deal. And I'll point somebody in the audience. I say, "Hey, are you wearing the cheapest shirt you can find?" And they go, "Well, no, absolutely not." "And are you wearing the most expensive?" "No." "You found something in between that fit and solved your problem." People don't buy on price. And the older reference I have is, if that was true, if we bought on price, we'd all be driving Yugos, the old car made in Czechoslovakia, but Yugoslavia, I mean. So people don't buy on price. People buy on value. But that value is, can your product or service fix a problem that they have that the competition can't fix? So make sure that's one of the things you do is we have a conversation, and it can even just sound like that. "Hey, Mr. Prospect, you mind if we have a conversation about what my product or service can do that the competition can't do?" And preemptive move is basically something like when they, "Oh, wow, we can get it cheaper." You know what? Let me ask you the question. If price is paramount, if this is purely a price-driven transaction, should we just start over as far as the product and service that I was offering? I mean, if price is what it's all about, yeah, I can always be the cheapest. And then they'll say, "Well, what do I get for that?" See, that's it. Now that's the issue. It's not necessarily that you want cheap, it's what do you get for that? So when you start sometimes with somebody, "I can get it cheaper." Well, let's just start over again. Let's go down to modify the product or service. If that's what we have to, they don't want to modify it. They want your product or service. They just want it cheaper, but you have to call their bluff on it, if you will. And that preemptive statement can be, "Hey, typically people buy because of one of five things. They want it either right, cheap, easy, quick, or personalized." They want it, your product, they want it done right. They want it personalized. They want it, they want to make sure that it's cheap. And I use the word cheap. And when I say, most people don't buy my sales training, they don't buy my product because they're looking for cheap sales training. They're looking for a personalized solution done right. They're looking for it done in a timely, and they want it easy. They want the process to be easy. And the last thing my clients want is cheap training. Can I ask you a question? Is that what you're looking for, is cheap training? I mean, give me, of the five, what's paramount to you? Price, right? Are you looking for cheap, quick, right, easy, or personalized? So find out when you begin and say that, "Hey, typically we're not the cheapest sales training program." Is that going to be an issue? Do it at the beginning so you don't have to fight and argue with it at the end. See, that's what a lot of salespeople do. They wait until the end to defend their price. In the beginning, you have to say, we typically aren't designed to be the low price entry level leader. Now, if you think about any business model, think about a pyramid, triangle, price, quality, service. And any business model, price, quality, service, what we're trying to achieve. But it's like Panera's. You can only have two. There is no business model where you can be the lowest price, best quality, best service. You'll be out of business in 6 months. But I usually say to people, "Hey, of those three, tell me about your business. What are your business striving to be? Are you the low price entry level leader and service, but not the great quality? Or are you trying to be good quality, great service at an affordable price?" And you can get off of that price thing right away. You need to bring it up before they do, or else at the end, you're fighting on this whole gambit that they give you that we can get it cheaper. So that's my conversation as far as the cheap thing, and deal with it up front. And I'll go over those five again. People want it, they want it done quick, they want it done right, they want the process to be easy, they want it to be personalized, and then they want it price wise. So why do you wait until the end to talk about price? Bring it up early and say, "Hey, of those five, what is paramount to you?" Right? Quick, easy, cheap, personalized. And let the client say it. And then if it doesn't match with how you provide your product or service, maybe they don't qualify to be your client then. So any questions on that one? Nobody in the
Nope.
room? Okay. Tim, anything?
Nope. Very clear.
All right.
Makes a lot of sense.
This is the next one, the lower authority, higher authority, where somebody says, "I'd go with you. If it was me, I'd pick you. But, my wife makes the decision if it's a home-based business kind of product or service." You know, when they start to pass the buck to somebody else, that there's a higher authority that's controlling them, and I'm not the decision maker. Then you need to say, hey, what's the process your company went through the last time you made a decision like this? And what I mean by that is never say to somebody, hey, are you the decision maker? They'll always say, well, yeah, I can tell you no. I might not be able to tell you yes, but I can tell you no. There's so never ask that question that way. Hey, are you the decision maker? Always put it in that process of what's the process your company went through last time? How does your company go about making decisions? Who else is impacted by this decision? Let's say you decide to go with me. Who needs to be informed that you're choosing to buy my product or service? When should we involve that person into the process? Because if you wait and you go and make your pitch and you give them your product, your service, and your price, they don't really need you anymore. Now they can always come back and say, well, I have to run this up the flyer. I got to take it to Bob. You should bring that up before them and what the decision-making process is, how that company goes about making decisions. Is it a committee decision? And even when somebody says, well, yeah, there's going to be a committee, then I'll say, yeah, I appreciate that. Hey, let's say the day the committee meets, so one person's absent, so it's four people. Two of them want to go with me, and two want to go with my competitor. I'm just curious, how do you break that tie? And what'll happen is in the room, if you're meeting with four people, one of them will turn to who the real decision maker is. And many times I've been in one with the company where I did that. And thinking that the president of the company makes the decision, everybody turned to the CFO. The CFO made the decision because he was the one who understood whether they had the money to move forward or not. Once I knew that who the real decision maker was, I was able to adjust and present to that decision maker. And if for some reason you can't see Oz, you don't get to see the man behind the curtain, you really need to say, hey, would it be out of the question for me to speak with the decision? Can we go together? Never do an end around. Just say, hey, would it make sense for you and I to go talk to the decision maker? Because that person might have some questions that you hadn't thought of. And if I'm not present, it might not be easy for you to answer those questions. So again, don't react to this gambit. Sometimes it is just a ploy that the prospect does to get all your free consulting without having to make a commitment, which is okay as long as you know what they're going to do with all the free consulting and information. Get a commitment from them as to, hey, if you're going to take this to a higher authority, would it make sense that by the end of the week, you'll have a conversation with that person and get back to me? So it just doesn't hang there like a dangling participle without a commitment as to what's going to happen next. This is the good guy, bad guy thing. It's not really me, but I'd really go with you. But Bob's the bad guy. It's almost like the good cop, bad cop, where they try and make this other person the evil empire, and they try and buddy up with you and say, "Boy, I really like you. I'd love to go with you, but Bob's a jerk." And well, you know what? Treat that bad guy like a real player. What I mean by players, there are certain people that love to negotiate. There are certain cultures that love to negotiate. I don't enjoy negotiating. I do it because it's part of my job. I don't really like it, but there are some people that actually really enjoy it, and they need to feel like they won, even a little bit. And so they act like a really tough guy, bad guy, just so that they feel that they can get leverage over you and let that person win. I get a kick out of that statement. It's a win-win situation. You know what? The story uses this. I had two ATVs for sale, two Foreman ATVs. They were identical 400 ATVs. And I put them on for 2,000 a piece, 4,000 for both of them. First guy came and he said, would you take, I don't want both, but would you take 1,800 for one? And I went, well, yeah, I still got the other one. I'll probably try and make it up with that one, but yeah, I'll go ahead. 1,800. And he walked away very, very happy with that. Next guy came in and said, hey, would you take 1,800? And I go, no, I really wanted to get, a little bit more out of this one. And I said, but all right, for you, yeah, I'll take 1,800. And he goes, why? What's wrong with it? And I went, nothing. He said, well, you came down too quickly in price. And he drove off paying $1,800 but felt like maybe he didn't get a good deal, where the other person paid the same price and he walked away really happy. So there are certain people just need to feel like they won. And if you can, maybe there's some bad guy at your office that can talk to their bad guy. Maybe that's the way you have to run it, is let your boss talk to that guy's boss and let them hash it out so that you maintain your positive relationship with the other prospect that you're already dealing with. But again, it is a gambit. It is just a ploy they use sometimes. Don't take it personal. That's the first thing in sales. If you take this stuff personal, you really get behind in the negotiating leverage. Hot potato. I love this one. Remember as a kid, hot potato, where you'd sit on the floor and you'd roll a ball across and it was hot potato. You had to toss it back to the other person real quick. Well, hot potato is when they try and make their problem your problem. And the sample is like the prospect says, oh man, we just had our budget cut by 30%. Well, that's their problem. But what they're trying to do is say to you, hey, I have my budget cost 30%, so I want you to cut your price 30%. It's not your problem that he hit his budget cut 30%. So just toss it back to them and just say, so what are you saying? Are you saying you want me to cut the quantity or the quality by 30%? And they'll say, well, I don't want you to cut either. I just want you to cut your margin. And I should do that because, so I've said this in a couple of my other trainings. Walter Cronkite, the great CBS newscaster, and his book, when he interviewed a lot of world leaders, said you can say because, just because, 3 times before it gets annoying. And you're asking for a 30% discount because, and I should do that because. Let them answer that question. And let's pretend, I love the let's pretend. Let's pretend I can't cut my quantity by 30%. What would happen next? Put it into their court and say, well, then we aren't moving forward. Instead of you having to be, boy, if we are going to move forward, I got to cut 30%. So it's just a gambit. Many times that isn't even true that they had their budget cut. It's just that there are certain people that feel that they have to negotiate and get a good price from you, and they'll use this gambit. This is the emotional outburst. Now, this is one that happens sometimes, and I'll explain a little bit more. In our trainings, what we talk about is questions. You're judged more by the questions you ask than the answers you give. And many times when a client asks a question, you immediately respond. But we try and get you to try and reverse it and ask another question. And sometimes what happens is people say, well, doesn't that get annoying? And you've asked so many questions, and the person says, so what do you charge for such and such? That's a great one. What do you charge for 3 hours of consultation? That's a great question. Probably more than you expecting. Why? What were you expecting? See how you reverse it on them and try and get, because it doesn't matter what you charge for your product or service. It matters what they intend to pay. So we got to get that out of them. But what happens is sometimes you ask so many questions and you don't do the stroke. That's a great question. Glad you asked. Appreciate that question. And you just reverse it with a question. It gets annoying. So you get them upset and they get really emotional about it. Boy, you're really upsetting me. Answer my question. And they get real upset. They're trying to put you on the heels again, just like the flinch, the number one we talked about. Don't panic, fall back. John, really love to work with you, but it's clear I've crossed the line with you. It sounds like we wouldn't be your first choice, even if price wasn't an issue. Can I ask you a question? Are we past the point of no return? What happens is by staying neutral, you talk them off the ledge. Are we past the point of no return? And what happens is they're thinking in their mind, oh my God, that ploy didn't work. And no, they usually come back. No, that's not. But just don't panic. Sounds like I've crossed the line. Really apologize. But sounds like even if price wasn't the issue, I probably wouldn't be your first choice. Can I ask you a question? Typically, when I meet with people, they have a vendor in mind that they hope comes in with a good price so they can work with them. And I'm getting the feeling I'm not that vendor. You mind sharing with me who that vendor is that you hope comes in with a good price and what's different about them? Stay in that neutral kind of area. Otherwise, if you start going toe to toe with them, you'll probably lose. So just go neutral, ask them a question, and see if they can respond that way. This one's always another one that people get. Just give me your best and final offer. Where the prospect just, let's cut to the chase. Just give me your best price. Again, hey Bob, I appreciate that. But if price weren't an issue, what would you do? I mean, if you could get the service you wanted, the quality you wanted, and price wasn't the issue, who would you go with? And then you can have a conversation about why that wouldn't be me. Or they might say, I want to go with so and so. And that's because, well, I want to go so and so because they're local. I had this happen one time where the guy goes, well, I'd rather go with this guy because I like buying local. Really, help me with that. You want to buy local. Yes, I want to support my own community. So I want to buy sales training from somebody who's in my community. And that makes sense. I can appreciate that. All things being equal, if you can get the same service, same product, and you can buy from locally, you do that. Yes. Suppose you find out that the local person wouldn't be able to provide the same quality and services. Would you be as loyal to them under those circumstances or that scenario? And you get to have a conversation, not an interrogation. Have a conversation, not an interrogation with them. So again, best and final offer, just, hey, if price wasn't the issue, what would you do? Because again, go back to what I said before. People don't buy on price, they buy on value. And value is a four-legged proposition. Think of a four-legged stool. What is the product? What does the product do? What problem does the product solve? And then the last thing is, how would they evaluate that solution against the competition? And you're part of that fourth leg of that stool, because the one thing that client can't get from the competition is you. And if you've built a good relationship with that person and you bonded with them, remember, French word for rapport is come together. So if you think about it, if you've bonded with that person, you're so much part of that four-legged value proposition that it should offset price. Don't allow price to think in your mind that you have to be the lowest, cheapest to get that business. If you do, if I want you to think about it this way. If people buy, if they come to you on price, they'll leave you on price. And if you're selling a residual type of product or service, if you sell them on price, you'll always be behind the eight ball. So make sure that you're staying in the game as far as quality and service, not just price. Escalation. I'm sure some of you've got this one, where they try and dangle that carrot at you. Say, hey, if you give me a really good deal now, we've got this big project coming out, and give me a good deal now, and you might get access to the other one. Here's what you have to do. You have to say, hey, I appreciate that. But company policy is, Bob said policy at the office, that I can't discount on a deal without a commitment on the next deal. And use company policy. I mean, think about those of you listening to me. How many times has somebody used a company policy on you? The policy is this, the policy is that. Well, I'm trying to remember the last time somebody did a policy on me. Oh, in the shopping center around here, they give everybody in the shopping center that works in the shopping center a 10% discount. So when we went to a Japanese restaurant here, I asked the waitress, say, hey, do you guys honor the 10% discount because we work here in the shopping center? And she, well, I don't know. I hadn't heard about that. Let me go talk to my boss. And the boss came back and he said, well, I don't usually do that, but I'll give you a 10% discount if you promise me you'll give me a discount always in the future at your pro. And I had to say, hey, I appreciate that, but I can't promise the future. If there's not a fit today, if you don't want to give me a 10% discount, I certainly understand that, but I can't make a commitment going further on this. He still gave me the discount. He was just trying to be a player. He was just trying to win. So again, use company policy is why you can't. Nibbling. This is when they only give you bits and pieces of it, incremental negotiating, where they start giving you a little bit and a little bit. And boy, sell me 10 now. I'll buy 10 more next month and I'll buy 10 more. You know, set the tone up front. Immediately tell people, hey, we seldom discount. This is a product or service that we usually do not have to discount. Then if you do discount it, now they feel like a winner. If you set the tone up front that you don't have to discount this product or service because it's a very, very popular product or service, then if you do discount it, they feel like they won. And that's part of the negotiating is, remember, people just want to be winners. So last thing before I close this one out and I'll open up the question is, remember to surround yourself with positive people. You know, there's enough negativity in the world right now. don't look to be stroked by other people because they also are negative, and you can sit there and think, well, at least I'm not as bad as that person. Positive people hang with other positive people, and make sure that you surround yourself with coworkers who don't sell on price or who don't complain. I get a kick out of some salespeople in training where they'll say to me, well, here's my problem. If I just had a better product at a lower price and leads, I can sell that. A better product at a better price, and you give me the leads, I can go make the presentation. My response to that is, well, then what the hell we need you for? If we had the best product at the lowest price, we don't need a salesman for that. We just put our price sheet up on the internet, people will buy. The salesperson's job is to fill in those gaps from people who don't buy on price and need to be educated as to what their pain is, not necessarily on your product or service, but need to be educated on what the problem that that person has and why you are uniquely positioned to solve that problem. People do not buy your product or service. They buy solutions to their problem. Unfortunately, with salespeople, what happens is we go through training and the company spends 2 weeks training you on product knowledge and how great their product is and telling you why they're better than competition. And after 2 weeks of product knowledge, you think, well, this must be important. They just spent all this time teaching me. I guess I got to regurgitate it instead of thinking about the product or service. And product and service knowledge is important, but it's important to you so that you know you're representing a good company. What's important to the client is, hey, can you solve my problem at a price I can afford? And that's what every salesperson should be striving for. They should be going every sales transaction thinking about, what is it that I can uniquely bring to this person? What can I offer this person that my competition might not offer? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the cheapest. If you go into a negotiating thinking that price is paramount, you'll always be behind the 8 ball. So anyway, that's our session. As I said, most times we don't want things to go longer than a half hour because it loses a lot of relevance to you and you start to zone out after a while. So is there any questions from anybody in the group here? You can unmute yourself if you have. Or even just a comment. Yeah, that made sense. No, that didn't make sense. Anybody?
Well, I really like
Hi,
the
Dave.
because thing because I had never heard that before about you can use the because 3 times, and I liked how you put that back on them, but not in a way that is confrontational or anything like that.
Absolutely, yeah. Because the way you need to think about it is knowledge is power. The more knowledge you have, the more power you have. And you gain knowledge from asking questions. So when somebody asks you a question and they say, well, how soon can you deliver? And that's important to you because instead of saying, oh, well, you know what, we can't deliver, we can't put that out for another 3 weeks. Now you've just lost it, maybe. And that's important to you because, well, because I'm going on vacation next week, I'd like to get this right. Could be a completely different reason than what you thought it might have, that they needed it right away. So the because helps you get more information. Just because remember, the dumber you have, more people want to help you. So because is almost a dummy curve. It's almost like because like I didn't really understand why do you need it done that quickly? What would be, somebody says, well, I need it by the end of October. Interesting. And you need the end of October. Let's pretend we got it to you the first week in November. That would help you how? Because sometimes when somebody's, I need it end of October, they don't get it until the November, but they're at that time to kind of move up the timeline on it. And when you say because, you need it because you'll get more information so that you can decide what to do with this information move forward. So thanks for that one, Tim. Because make sure you use that as often as you can.
Right. I like it.
Anything else?
No, I think that's that. I don't have any questions. I liked all that.
Just do it. And you like it because you like it because
I've never heard it, and it has that night. Like I said, it has that nice resonance that it puts it back on them and makes them think about it and explain their position, which then allows you to answer the real question and the real question that's there.
and part of it is you really have to be curious and skeptical. And I'm not saying be phony. You really have to be curious and skeptical about the application of your product or service to their needs. You walk in, oh, I'm sure we're the latest, greatest, most approved. I'm sure I can help you. We're this or that. If you start with certainties, you'll end in doubts. But if you start with doubts, you'll end in certainties. Now, that's not me. That was Sir Francis Bacon, if any of you remember that. And he actually, so think about it that way. Think about that phrase. If you start with certainties, the process is that they'll end in doubts. But if you start with doubts, conversations together and you'll both end with certainties. So, hey, I'm not sure if what I've done for hundreds of other people is going to fit in your world. Let's pretend I was able to do this, this, and this. That would help you how? You start with a little doubt. Now the client, and oh, that would help me because it would do this, this, or this. And that's what makes you different than other salespeople. Other salespeople start with certainties and they push somebody toward a product or service. I'm sure we're the latest, greatest, most improved. I'm sure I can help you. And what the client's thinking is, well, how do you know you can help me? You don't even know everything about my company or product or what I need. But if you say, I'm not sure what I can do for you, do you mind if we have a conversation? And at the end, we'll discover together whether I'm the best fit for you now. So again, let me say it one more time. If you start with certainties, you'll end in doubts. But if you start with doubts, you'll end in certainties. You guys like that one?
I do. I like that one too.
Yeah. Yeah. Just change your whole philosophy of selling. If I could get more salespeople to do that, selling becomes easier for everybody because now you're having conversations. If you think about most sales is about trying to convince, push somebody to buy your product or service. But if you pull them away from the direction with doubts, they'll, oh, I'm sure you can help me. I'm sure you, and now they said it, not you. Dave, how's everything going with you? Anything I can do for you? No? Might be driving. All right, I'm gonna stop the recording. So